I'm living in Singapore, you're in Amsterdam. When you're opening a bank account, out of the box, you're getting euro, dollars. But for most people on the planet, they don't have access to those strong currencies. And the beauty of that is by just downloading an app, you are globally financially included. You can have access to dollars.
Eric Barbier, founder and CEO of AAA, the stablecoin rails trusted by Grab, Farfetch, and 1,000+ other enterprises across 120 countries. 2 exits, 3 companies, 20 years building global payment infrastructure. This is his story. Are stablecoins revolutionary or rhetoric?
For me, they are closer to a certain revolution. For instance, a second-hand car exporter from Japan. All their potential clients are telling them, hey, we're having a hard time getting US dollar. Can we pay with stablecoin?
What moment or experience early in your life shaped you the most into the person that you're sitting opposite of me today?
I was about 17, 16 years old. My dad lost his job.
Oh, wow.
And it was, the worst year of my life.
What has for you been personally the hardest moment in your entrepreneurship?
When I sold the company, I felt like I sold my kid for his kidney.
That's very horrible.
It took me 1 year to recover.
How do you know the difference between a vision that's ahead of its time or something that's just gonna go bust? Eric, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All the way from Singapore. Thanks for making time. Let's get started. You founded and scaled and exited multiple companies. First, Mobile 365, a global mobile messaging network with over 400 million subscribers, acquired by SAP for more than $425 million. Then, Transfer 2, cross-border payment infrastructure for emerging markets, now known as Tunes and DT1, valued at approximately $900 million at the moment, or at least based on research. Could be outdated. And then in 2020, you started AAA. Fast forward, 1,000 enterprise clients, 120 countries, reaching over 700 million digital currency owners, trusted by names like Grab, Farfetch, and Razer, licensed in the US, Europe, and Singapore. But before we deep dive on those numbers, on the growth, on the success story, I have a question for you. Looking back on your entrepreneurship, which decision ultimately had the most influence on where you stand today?
I would say the decision which make a huge impact was to actually not start a company. And
okay.
So when I graduated from engineering school, I took the decision to go to an old-fashioned company, fairly large, a Dutch company.
Oh, really?
Back then, like Philips.
Oh, really?
So it was the smart card division of Philips, which got acquired multiple times after that.
Yeah.
Because I started my first company, I was 14. And obviously my parents discovered that and they took the computer away from me.
Oh, no way. What was the company?
It was a software company for education.
Wow.
I signed a first contract and so on.
14 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And so entrepreneurship was really at the heart of what I was doing. During my study, I started something which would be something like an ERP. Mm-hmm. And also we had like a couple of clients and so on. So I had this in my blood.
Yeah.
And yeah. And then I got this job offer. It was like 96, 97. We were at the beginning of the internet bubble.
Yeah.
So, when you were a software engineer, the sky was the limit. You were called all the time by headhunters and things like this. So, and that's where I learned a lot of things.
Okay.
I felt it was a bit boring and so on because it was industrial, doing smart card. So I was doing the software inside the SIM cards. Mm-hmm. But you need to learn a lot of process because the problem is that you cannot make a bug because you have to put the code in the semiconductor back then, and so it was like a 3 months process. So you really had to give perfect software. and you had to follow industrial process and so on and so on. And that's where I learned a lot of things, and that's where I found all our co-founders of our first mobile company, the Mobile 365, which is the SMS, if you recall the thing before WhatsApp.
Yeah. Why do you mention this as one of the most important decisions?
Because it really helped me to structure myself and learn how the different function, being able to respect the planning, and a lot of those methodology, which are the things I hate as an entrepreneur, because you want to go fast and break things. But it's important to know those things. And I think I've learned a lot, and I was extremely lucky, starting in 96 in the mobile space. It was insane because, especially in Europe, which invented GSM and the whole mobile industry, it was amazingly big. So extremely lucky. And that's where I learned how to work. It was an international company by default, and all my companies have been global from day one. So those 3 years, the only 3 years where I actually worked in my life, have been fundamental in terms of learning and shaping what I became.
Very interesting, because specifically, as you say, 14 years old, first company, then during high school or university, second company, or at least busy with building something else, then you still decide to go corporate route. Yeah.
And I think that was a great move.
Yeah.
Those 3 years were amazing. We invented, the first Java SIM cards, and that was, and first value-added services. You could get the weather, you could request the weather. It looks obvious, but remember, it was the only data channel you could have on phones back then was SMS. And that's been an amazing journey.
If we then fast forward to AAA, or actually, if we go back to the moment that AAA became an idea, where were you and what triggered it?
So I was at Tunes, what now is Tunes, and the very beginning, I would say, was a Friday night. I was staying late, and many of my engineers they were also late, but usually they were playing video games on Friday nights. But I looked at their screen, and it was clearly not video games. And what I realized is that they were actually mining with my electricity. So they were the first one to explain to me about, crypto, blockchain, and all those things. I actually bought my first Bitcoin from one of my engineers.
What?
and so that's how I got interested in the whole blockchain.
When was this, more or less? Which year?
I would say 2018.
Okay.
17,
Yeah. Ethereum was on the rise.
Yeah. And so that's where I get started to be interested. There were some first thing about stablecoin. I remember I found some old emails where it was not very clear how we would call it. The name was not as prevalent as it is now. Because I saw one of the things, first thing I loved was the fact that there was no risk of fraud, no risk of chargeback. There was no way to reverse a transaction. And because at Tunes, a lot of the use cases, a lot of the clients are Western Union, Remitly, the remittance company. And one of their biggest pain point is that they are subject to a lot of fraud, especially with credit cards. And I say, that's a perfect technology for those guys, because once a transaction is confirmed on the blockchain, there's no way to reverse it. And so a perfect fit. And second thing, which took me a bit longer to fully understand, and that was one of my biggest problems, and to go back on the entrepreneur journey, is that in the remittance space, everything is pre-funded. So it means that you have to have a lot of working capital in order to fund this. And so the story is that at the very beginning of Transfer 2, we end up having a massive client. And the only reason I had to raise money, because we were almost profitable, but I needed working capital, which is, and I tried to go to banks, but saying banks, no, I can't lend on this thing I don't understand. And that was a bit a stupid thing. I couldn't find another way than raising capital where it should have been funded by debt or something, another instrument. So, you're getting diluted just to fund this.
Back then, when this idea arose for you, were there already other players where you could look at that were doing it already or not yet?
On AAA, no. I think that was quite new. Most people would say no. People are, it was just seen as crypto trading. And people forgot that even Bitcoin was invented for payment. And my vision is that if it's not a payment instrument, it has no value. Back then, and also my idea is that I was seeing all the crypto companies explaining to regulator, we're on another planet. Yeah. We don't need to follow the same rule. But I was running a regulated financial institution saying, hey, I'm sorry, you're moving something which looks like money. You should be having the equivalent regulation. And so that was my idea from the start is we're first a financial institution. We happen to use the blockchain rails to make it more efficient. But our DNA is to be a financial institution.
Interesting. You just mentioned that crypto only has value if it has a payment utility or you can use it for payments. Can you maybe elaborate on that and why you have that view?
The reason Bitcoin was invented is to have a trustless mechanism of transferring value from one person to the other. And I think that's something people have forgotten in a way. So, but
seen as a value store, actually, more like you put value.
So the value store, but it's because you can move it. So very often, and I think the analogy is pretty good with gold, is that I can sell you gold, I can exchange gold, and so on, and so is
still
Bitcoin.
You can pay with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and I'm just curious that what the concrete problem, and we're already discussing like what were the challenges that you wanted to solve, but if you look at it today, what is the concrete problem you're solving and for who specifically?
So I think the biggest problem stablecoin is solving is enabling anyone on the planet to get a USD denominated account. I'm living in Singapore. You're in Amsterdam. When you're opening a bank account, out of the box, you're getting euro, dollars, pounds, whatever. But for most people on the planet, they don't have access to those strong currencies. And the beauty of that is by just downloading an app, a MetaMask or whatever, you are globally financially included. You can have access to dollars. So if I'm a freelancer in Africa, in LATAM, and that's a use case we're seeing more and more, is like this freelancer, when he was working for, say, an American company or European company, he prefers to get paid in stablecoins, in USDC or USDT, instead of even US dollar or his local currency, because even if he gets US dollar, this money is going to be forcibly converted at a bad rate onto his bank account in Nigerian Naira and so on. And then to convert back the Naira back to dollars, good luck.
Okay. And why does it matter to you?
Why does it matter to me? Because, again, if I go to my previous startup, like Tunes, our key focus was, from day one, was how to send money to mobile phones in emerging markets. Because I understood since I started Transfer 2, that was like 2008, I understood that mobile phone would be the way for most of the people on the planet to get an account, a bank account, and so on. And that's where we've seen mobile wallets, mobile money, being a huge success, M-Pesa or
You're actually following the entire like parts of it, but the entire evolution, the 3 companies in a row.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you had those mobile wallets, and they've been doing an excellent job at banking people who were totally unbanked and far from being banked, but it's only at the domestic level.
Yeah.
So this infrastructure is amazing, but people, even though they have a mobile wallet in Kenya, for instance, they are still not able to convert easily their Kenyan shillings to US dollar and back and forth. And that's where stablecoin is playing.
And is there any personal reason why it matters to you as well? Like, why do you care about this specifically?
I don't know. For some reason, I've always been doing emerging markets. So if we go back to the very first one, to the SMS company, one of our biggest use cases was to interconnect mobile operators internationally. And for instance, one of my big corridor, because it was technically very difficult for people to do that, it was sending SMS in and out of Hong Kong. Hong Kong, very competitive market. They were back then 6 mobile operators for a 6 million people island. That's quite competitive. They were the first to introduce mobile number portability, so huge competition, and so all the telcos were trying to highly differentiate. And what I discovered, so they were the first to implement SMS, international SMS, and a lot of the business was with emerging markets because of the foreign workers. Yeah. So there's probably 500,000 Filipino workers in Hong Kong. Yeah. And so obviously my route between Hong Kong and the Philippines, even though it was just SMS, because people were texting back and forth with their family and so on. So I was actually following immigration pattern.
Yeah. So actually what I'm hearing, it's also part of just where it's more like going with the flow and where you end up and then getting expertise and therefore seeing other challenges and then start creating solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the kind of guy who is completely making revolution and so on. I'm more like associating one thing with the other. Yeah. When I started TransferTune, now Tune, I got the idea because of this SMS going back and forth between Singapore and Philippines and so on. And once I was in the Philippines and I saw that people could exchange between themselves prepaid mobile credits, the very, very first version of a mobile wallet. I say, oh, hold on a minute. If people are doing it domestically in the Philippines, there must be a business to do it from Singapore to the Philippines so that people would use it as a micro remittance service.
Yeah, yeah. And if we talk about the services that you currently offer, there are 3 main services: accept payments, payout, and white label remittance. Is there any focus which is the core, or it's all 3?
So we started with the stablecoin acceptance. That's really, and that's usually where we are very well known for, because I don't think we have too much competition on that front. So and usually because those are names like the names you mentioned initially, like a Farfetch, like a Trip.com. Those are very well known brands, and you understand that, oh, now I will be able to buy my next flight using stablecoin. And so it's actually just 1/3 of our business, but that's the piece we started with and we're quite famous with. And that was the whole idea. Even when I started, now it's about 500 million people having stablecoin, but when I started, it was like more like 50 million. But even 50 million was good enough. One of the big problem with payment is how to break the chicken and egg.
Okay. How do you mean?
But if you introduce tomorrow a new wallet out of the blue, nobody's going to take it because no merchant is accepting it, and no merchant's going to accept it because nobody's using it. So how do you break this chicken and egg? It's interesting in the stablecoin issuing world when I see everybody who wants to issue their own stablecoin, like the last one, MoneyGram, I think this week, and it's like, but how do you break the chicken and egg problem? And it's not because you're building your own stablecoin that people are gonna take it, because it's really a huge network effect.
Yeah.
And so when I saw in 2020 that there were already 50 million stablecoin crypto users saying, "Hey, that's already big enough to interest some merchants to accept stablecoin as a payment option."
And given it's a growing thing, 100% understand. I want to dive deeper on the company and stablecoin specifically. But before, I find it really important to understand you better. So what moment or experience early in your life shaped you the most into the person that you're sitting opposite of me today?
Oh, wow. Some of the things I've said already. I think, maybe the most important for me was I was about 16, 17 years old, and my dad lost his job.
Oh, wow.
And it was, the worst year of my life. He was such in a bad mood. He's from the, baby boom, the amazing growth until very good corporate and career and so on.
What was he doing?
He was an engineer, but he was managing director in a fairly automobile group.
Okay, yeah.
And he lost his job, and that's where I clicked and I say, hey, I was telling myself by once I get 30 years old, I want to be financially independent. And I want to be my own boss, because I don't want this to happen to me.
What is the moment that you're now picturing in your mind of this specific situation?
What's the moment? I think once I was coming back home. I was home. And I was watching TV, and I was not allowed to watch TV in the afternoon. In those days, you couldn't watch on your phone. And he came back, and he shouted at me, and because he was such in a bad mood. It's and that's the memory I remember. So then I say, oh yeah, I don't want this to happen to me when I grow up.
So that was the fire to be
an
your
entrepreneur.
own,
yes, absolutely,
independent.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it? Do you really? You still feel that today, in a way, in how you operate? Or not?
I think it's important for me to not have, to be able to do what I want. That's one of the reasons we haven't been raising too much money. I'm not a big fan of a big VC game.
No. You lose autonomy.
I think I'm too old now to be told what to do.
Yeah, based on what you're saying, it's not just age, right? It's
no.
I know you're joking, but
it's a mindset.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Then we go back, but before we go back to AAA, we've talked about Transfer2 and Tunes a couple of times. I'm just curious because you built this out to being one of the bigger infrastructures or payment networks. And then you could say, maybe not the peak, but at a good and a high moment, you step away. And this is now, that was the second company. So you build and then you leave. You build and then you leave. How is it to now then see Tunes grow to what it has become from the sidelines? How is that for you? Because you've been part of the founding of it.
No, but it's great. It's great to see your baby continuing to grow. And it's kind of different. So I don't know how much you know about the story, but the whole Transfer2 Tune story happened in two phases. I started the company as Transfer2. That was 2008. Yeah, around 2008. And we. The funny thing is, like, for 1 year, no, not a single client. You're saying, well, maybe it was a bad idea. And
you still push through? You do, but
we end up, but it took 1 year. We had to build the network, so the receiving side, to convince people that it would make sense to send money to a mobile phone cross-border.
Yeah.
And for most people, remember 2007, 2008, if you're telling people, oh, you should send money to a mobile phone in Africa, most people say, hey, but in Africa they don't have money, so they can't even afford a mobile phone, because mobile phone was seen as a luxury thing, because in Europe everybody, or in the US even worse, everybody had a landline. So you can wait to be back home to make a phone call. It's very rare. You really
the impact of legacy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. While in emerging markets, they completely leapfrog the landline. Yeah. And so convincing the decision maker, typically old male white, who never been to Africa or Vietnam or Indonesia. It took a while to convince them that it was actually a good idea. But we managed to convince our first client. He was a telco in Malaysia. And so our very first transaction was between Malaysia and Indonesia. There's about 3-4 million Indonesian workers in Malaysia. And it took off. So there was consumer demand to send a couple of dollars back home, and then increased and so on.
You were saying, so it was 2 phases.
So company went very well and so on. We had to raise money because of the working capital issue. And we got acquired a first time. So that was Ingenico, publicly listed company back then in the payment side. Now they are only doing the hardware, but they used to be a full PSP. And so I sold the company. And that's where, back to your question, sorry, I'm taking a lot of time.
Take your time. Yeah.
But back to your question, when I sold the company, I felt like shit. I felt like I sold my...
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up question.
I felt like I sold my kid to for his kidney and something like this.
That's very horrible.
It took me 1 year to recover. And I was still running the company, because the company was fairly early stage. We had a pretty good valuation, but I had a fairly long earnout. I had to stay for 3 years. And so the funny thing is that I reached my goal, financial independence and so on. But and it's quite kind of normal that when you reach your goal, then you feel like
what's
next and so on. So and I felt like I sold the company a bit too early, but I wanted the money.
Yeah.
And so what was interesting is that then 3 years later we had the opportunity to buy it back, and that what then became Tunes.
Okay. So yeah. Is it for you? Do you believe that you're best in a certain stage of the cycle of a company's growth or not?
Yeah. I'm clearly very good at 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 1 to maybe 50.
Yeah.
I never ran a company which was doing more than $100 million revenue.
Is there, and how? What's the reason for that, in your opinion?
Because
you had the opportunities. If you
you're right.
That's why I'm asking.
You're right. I think I'm looking for perfection, and the problem is that as soon as you have like too many employees, you can't make sure that they're all perfect, and it's just no matter how much you work, you just can't do that. So you need to accept something which is slightly below, and I hate that.
No, but I think it's something strong, because at the same time you could also argue I only want to go for the biggest thing, disregarding whatever. Whereas you are saying, no, this is my sweet spot. This is what I enjoy most, and that for me is success.
Yeah, you're right. And my frame of mind, one of the reasons I'm doing companies, I'm doing things, is that I've got an intuition. So typically, I would speak around to people and say, "Oh no." So then it's upsetting me, and I want to prove them they're wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to prove I'm right.
When was the first time this ever happened in your life?
I would say, the SMS. So we started Mobile 365 in 99, and people were telling us, "Oh, but SMS is dead. There's WAP." I don't know if you remember WAP.
I don't.
First version of mobile internet. I don't even remember what it stands for. Wireless application protocol, something like that. So it was the first version of doing something which looks like internet but nothing has been a success until the iPhone.
Yeah.
And SMS is still I'm sure you're receiving a lot of OTPs and notifications which are still done by SMS.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking, no, never mind. Yesterday, or actually when we were recording this is during more or less Money 2020. It's now just concluded more or less. One of the topics that was raised there on, I think it was main stage, was the question, are stablecoins revolutionary or rhetoric?
For me, they are closer to a certain revolution. So not for every use cases. Well, one thing I get fed up is when you read on LinkedIn or in conferences, like Visa, MasterCard's going to go away, Swift's going to go away. That's not true.
No.
It's another rail, and it's going to have a huge impact for emerging economy. So my vision is that stablecoin payments are going to be, 15, 25% of cross-border payments involving emerging markets. That's my prediction.
Okay.
In the next few years.
And why not more?
Why not more? Because there would be an opportunity in the US because the payment system is still a bit outdated, even though now we're starting to get RTP and FedNow. But if you look at Euro, where you have SEPA Instant, stablecoin is not solving any problem. You can move money 24/7. It's not solving any problem. The euro, it's very easy to convert your euros in dollars and vice versa.
Yeah.
So not solving any problem there.
So it's like the lack of other use cases that would make the chunk larger. But would you say for remittance, it's going to be 100% stablecoin?
Remittance is interesting, especially if
that's a different angle of looking at it, of course.
Yeah, you are right. And if we're talking like
payments in total, then you say 50.
Depends what you call what you're putting behind remittances. Is remittances like family supports sending back home between developed and emerging markets?
I would like to get your view on the total picture. So if you would, how would you break it down?
I think this last use case, which is the C2C remittance, like the Western Union, the Remitly of this world, I think is going to be the least impacted because I think typically the family of a Western Union client is probably not going to be the early adopter of this technology. But still, in the very long run, and to go back to the example I was giving about the freelancers, for me, that was one of the issues I had at Tunes, is that it doesn't make sense to convert good dollars into an emerging market currency. So for me, the future of remittances is no remittances. People are going to want to stick to stablecoin for as long as they can, maybe just convert at the last minute when they need to buy, local food. But then they would keep. So I'm seeing a future, and you could see some markets like if you go in the Philippines, if you take Gcash, which is one of the very large mobile wallet there, is that you have a stablecoin balance. You can have a stablecoin balance and a Filipino peso balance.
Okay. But then back to the question, how do you see that percentage-wise? Like how the adoption? So for C2C, you say, okay.
So, and the big use case is more like B2B. That's where we're seeing a lot of attraction today on the market. Import-export, we're seeing... for instance, we have a second-hand car exporter from Japan. So they're exporting second-hand cars, Japanese cars, to Africa. And one of their all their potential clients are telling them, "Hey, we're having a hard time getting US dollar. Can we pay with stablecoin?" And so that's the perfect problems statement that
Yeah.
stablecoin is solving.
Yeah, clear. Then, talking about adoption, I'm just curious, like, what is the biggest hesitation that you hear the most when in conversation with potential customers regarding considering AAA and stablecoin?
So 80-90% of the discussion is around compliance. Is it legal? Will I go to jail? Reputation risk.
So it's very much an education play that needs to still really take place.
Absolutely, and still the case.
Yeah.
So it has, since the Genius Act in the US, my job is way easier to convince potential clients, but it's still the vast majority of the time is spent on explaining what are the controls we have in place, making sure how do we make sure that there's not going to be how we mitigate money laundering risks, that we're not exposed to sanctions, all these things.
Yeah.
And people, because it's new and so on, and they need to double click. How do you use the blockchain analysis tools to be able to trace where the stablecoins?
It's an entire new world.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And they need to understand. They really want to understand because people still remember the FTX. Some of the more negative news from we got from the digital asset industry.
Yeah. So if I understand correctly, AAA helps businesses use stablecoins without really ever touching crypto themselves. You're essentially building an entry for people who don't want to do it themselves. Do you actually believe do you believe in that approach, or is it just the market asking it for that right now?
So my view, our target clients are large global enterprises. They are in the US, they're in Europe, they're in Singapore, Hong Kong. That's the kind of maybe in the UAE as well. Big global exporters selling internationally and so on, multinational companies. And for them, holding stablecoin is creating more problem, but it doesn't provide any solution. It's not solving any problem because they have access to dollars, to euros.
Yeah.
They have like JP Morgan's account across the world and so on. So stablecoin is not solving a problem. So they don't want to hold stablecoin because it's only issues. It's still a CFO nightmare. Your auditors will not know how. If you're saying, "Hey, I've got $50 million in stablecoin," prove it to me. What's the process? There's no. Show me in your wallet. What's a wallet? All these kind of things. And so my vision is that those enterprises, they are more than happy to transact with stablecoin, but they don't want to touch it, to have that in their own balance sheet.
Yeah. And there will always be a segment that remains like that, because here in the Netherlands you have the Albert Heijn, which is the supermarket, and I'm sure in every other supermarket elsewhere, you can go to the supermarket and buy an apple, or you go to the section where the apple is cut already, and you have still a large people that go to that part and just get cut up apples. And in a way, this is like in that stage. Either you buy a tree and you grow your own apples, you buy an apple, or you buy the cut up apple, and then somewhere there's always going to be a flavor that matches your needs.
I like the analogy.
Yeah, nice. And then also maybe looking forward, because we talked about. We really actually the dominant stablecoins are the USD backed stablecoins. But do you think that there is going to be room for the EU and maybe other currencies to have solid stablecoins, or is it really going to be US dominated?
It's clearly US dominated. I'm not seeing much demand for Euro stablecoins, to be honest. The regulation in Europe has been a bit, as usual in Europe, over-regulating things. We're in stupid situation, for instance, with Mika, where Bitcoin, I can do Bitcoin payment, I can do USDC payment, but I cannot do USDT payment. And exactly the same regulatory risk, money laundering risk is exactly the same. So to me, it doesn't make sense. So that's not going to help
No.
getting new use cases, competition, and finding the right place. So I wouldn't be very bullish on Euro stablecoin. I'm more in the non-USD stablecoin. I'm very interested in the Japanese yen because Japan is not so open as a market. So there's some inefficiencies in the cross-border payment with Japan. I would say the same for Korean won, but I think Korea is still at least a year, if not 2 years, away from having the proper regulation. Hong Kong dollar, very interesting as well. They issued two licenses earlier this year. So that's very interesting because Hong Kong dollar is pegged to the US dollar and is also a way to go to China.
Yeah.
So there are some markets where it's solving a problem. I would say the UAE, the AED stablecoin. I think they issued also a couple of licenses. Are interesting markets because that can solve some issues.
What I find really strong about more or less everything we're discussing so far is that you constantly are relating it back to what problem is it solving. If you look at the market today, do you already start seeing, let's say there was an internet bubble and everybody was just jumping on internet. You could say there's AI or maybe even a stablecoin bubble starting to grow. Like, do you already see companies and things happening that are too far away from real world problems or?
Oh yeah. We're coming back from Money 2020, and I bump into even friends. Oh yeah, I started a stablecoin company. Okay, great. You're not early, and it's going to take time to get the licenses and things. But so what is your angle? Because there's already people like me and others, and there's different niche, and good luck. And people are, okay, I'll be figuring out. So. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a bit too much hype. The
hype and FOMO, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Your career that we've discussed so far is one of highlights, but I'm also sure there's been moments of doubt and uncertainty. What is the biggest moment of doubt and uncertainty in your career?
I mean, I mentioned briefly, it's like, the 1 year, or you're saying, you're building a thing, you're talking to clients and say, no.
How do you hold on? Like, what keeps you going in that moment? Like,
the click here, we got an idea with my employee number one back then, was to do a survey of our clients.
Yeah.
And so we hired a couple of students to go where the foreign workers were living and so on, and asking the question. And it was outstanding. Everybody was saying, a very high proportion of people were saying, hey, that would be a service we would be using. To a point where I told my guys, like,
are you giving them money?
Yeah. Is it bullshit? Or, it's like the students feeling it themselves. And so, no, I went with them and so on. And it was overwhelming. And so we came back with this survey to our clients, and that's the way where they started to get convinced. That was how we found the click to finally convince our potential clients.
Yeah, because I can relate with one of the projects that I'm working on. It just seems as I'm walking against a wall over and over without really making any progress, because the let's say the people that experience it, they give very positive feedback, but it's because it's a very new type of solution that the market doesn't really understand yet, which in your case has been with every company more or less that you started. The pitch is very much harder to make and to get a seat at the table.
No, you're right, and that brings me to maybe another dimension.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I've been living in Singapore for 25 years, and one thing I loved about Asia in general is that people are way more open to take risk, to give it a try.
Yeah.
So
compared to
Europe or the US.
Yeah.
Europe, they need the 5 years plan, which is obviously totally bullshit. Because nobody has any clue of what's going to happen. And while in Asia, even the large corporate like telcos and banks and if it makes sense, if the investment is small, let's give it a try. And we'll write the business plan in the real life instead of guessing. And so that's something where I've been lucky to be in this part of the world, because I felt like people are more risk taking.
Yeah.
Of course, you couldn't ask like $1 million setup fee or this kind of thing, but yeah, it's people are way more pragmatic in this part of the world.
So the culture there is also different related to, let's say, failure, or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we give it a try. It works.
And if it doesn't?
Yeah, it doesn't. And also probably one of the reasons is manpower is a bit cheaper. So okay, we'll put an engineer on that. We'll do the integration.
Yeah.
Instead of because probably in Europe or in the US, engineers are super expensive and so on. So we need to prioritize.
The hurdle is larger.
Yeah, but I feel like all the time people are spending, prioritizing and so on, and with highly paid people that looking at this might be better spent in just trying. We do an MVP, it works great, and we move it as a proper product, and if not, we kill it.
Yeah, makes sense. So this was the moment of, let's say, doubt. What has for you been personally the hardest moment in your entrepreneurship?
I think I mentioned when I sold it.
That's really the hardest moments for you.
Yeah, because you've reached your goal, and so obviously, I don't have anything which comes to my mind.
How did that then change your perspective on purpose?
Oh, but you take bigger goals, huh? It's easy.
So you just keep setting bigger goals, goals.
Exactly.
Did anything else change from that moment onwards?
No, I don't think it did.
So what do you need to feel fulfilled? Big goals, that's one.
Yeah. Again, I like to solve problems. I want to prove I'm right. That's what I love.
What are you proving right now?
I'm proving that people want to pay with stablecoin. And even during those last 3 days here in Amsterdam, I think no, people don't pay with stablecoin. People they do. That's the only thing I'm doing. So whether it's a business paying another business or consumer buying something off the internet, that's the only thing I'm doing.
Interesting.
And people, they want to get paid with stablecoin. But always the same thing is because they don't have a problem. Again, they have a USD bank account or a Euro bank account, and they don't see as a problem for themselves.
Yeah, but that's the interesting part. So I was discussing this yesterday with a friend after the event. Like I started out in core banking with Mambu. Then I did fraud and AML at Feedzai. And when I was working at Mambu, my world was core banking. And even though I'm working in fintech, I still have a limited scope of what's happening. Then I moved to fraud and AML, same story, but then different angle. Now working with Marcel, connecting the dots, you now all of a sudden see the fintech industry as a whole, like a entire ecosystem. And then it's really it's such a different way of looking at things, which why I'm saying this is, even if people in fintech, which are at Money 2020, can still completely have no clue of what's happening in the stablecoin space. That's possible.
Yeah, which makes sense. I was thinking recently, meeting with a couple of bankers. When people are more on the lending side or trade finance, they have no idea of how even payment works.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about stablecoin, but we don't know how Swift works.
Yeah.
And they're still bankers. So whether it's fintech or the bank or finance in general, there's just so many different level of expertise.
Yeah.
And payment is, and I feel like I've been doing payments all my life, but I learn every day. because just if you focus on the micro segment of payment, they all come in so many different shape and forms.
Yeah, exactly. And then if we then look at the growth of AAA, what has been like the thing that has been moving the needle for the success of the company so far from a growth strategy point of view?
So the thing which has been, especially in the last, I would say, 18 months, is all the B2B transaction.
Okay.
That's been driving a lot of the growth, and those are big ticket items. They come in all different shape and form. So that's one of the challenges, to identify where we should go after, and how do we qualify leads, especially because of the hype around stablecoin. We're getting so many inbounds, and we have limited resources, especially talking about compliance. Onboarding is extremely costly, because there's no automated way to do KYC of businesses. So it's a very manual review and so on. So we need to be a bit selective. I hate to select clients because it's very difficult to assess whether.
But it's important.
Absolutely, because my
your resources are not unlimited.
Yeah, exactly. And my onboarding cost, because for me, signing a client is useless. That's what I keep telling to my sales guys. No,
that's not the KPI.
Absolutely. We're only making money when they're transacting through us. So signing the contract is one step.
It's interesting because I was reading an article this morning where companies that think that, let's say, purely the onboarding or purely the signing of the customer, so let's say until they are using, that's the KPI, those will fail miserably. You need to really understand, like, okay, what comes after and how do I get them operational and then stick? And if the KPIs are much more on that as well, you get a different mindset.
Unless you're selling software. If you're selling software...
not 100%, because even then I can sign, let's say, 10 customers that are not fully qualified. They're going to create a mess in delivery because they've been promised stuff that's not going to be...
100%. I agree. But and all my businesses have always been transactional businesses, so not software. It's not like a yearly or monthly license or something. It's always been the same thing. Whether it was SMS, sending money or so doing stablecoin payments, I only make money when my clients are making money. So
that's a good thing.
That's interesting because it's full alignment. But back to this point, signing a contract, that's only cost. Doing the KYC for onboarding, only cost. Tech integration, only cost. And we need to get those three things done. And so it's important that when we've made this investment, we're pretty sure that the client is going to be successful.
We did already touch upon this a little bit, but being early is only genius in hindsight. And what I mean by that is, or what I actually want to know is, while in the moment, like you mentioned with the company where it took a year to proceed and to carry on, how do you know the difference between a vision that's ahead of its time or something that's just going to go bust?
I don't have an answer for you. Sometimes, I've got a debate with one of my co-founders. Are we too early? Were we too early, or not? But especially in financial services, you still need to be early because there's so many things you need to build. You need to build to get your licenses. You need to get, and especially when it's evolving, there's no proper regulation and things like this. And then the key thing in payment is banking relationship. And that's also a history of my life. Is like banks, they hate remittances. They hate C2C remittances because there's a lot of money laundering risk and worse, terrorist financing risk. and like the same way they hate stablecoin. So for us, being able to demonstrate to the banks that we have the right controls in place, whether it's in terms of onboarding of our clients, making sure that the clients we're working with are legit, and post-transaction, pre-transaction, post-transaction, doing all the transaction monitoring and thing, that takes time. Being onboarded in a tier 1 bank, it's a 1-year due diligence. And it's, again, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
They want to see you, whether what you're saying you're going to deliver, they want to follow you. To make sure that you're really legit.
But for you, yeah, I think maybe the question is also, in the end, I think it also comes to, on the one hand, for you, it's your vision, it's gut feel. So you feel that there's something you need to pursue. But on the other hand, as you say, like if you build in these other, I don't know, metrics of how you track some kind of progress, I guess, to keep you understanding that you're moving into the right direction. And sometimes it's also just something needs to happen, and all of a sudden all the dominoes are falling into the right direction, I guess.
Yeah. After there's the market dynamics and so on, I could not have knew that the Genius Act would happen. I was convinced since 2020 that with back then 50 million, now 500 million people in this ecosystem, they wanted to transact with that. I was convinced from day one. So people were not like just using stablecoin for crypto trading.
Yeah,
it was invented for that.
So then I'm actually also curious, like, what would be your dream headline one day written about AAA?
Our dream would be, AAA's IPO has been a success.
Triple IPO is going to be a success. Okay,
has been a success.
That's the headline. Sorry, that's the headline back. That's the headline then.
Yes.
So, do you have the differentiators to make it happen? And what are those? If you, of course, you believe you have those.
I think for us, everything is about license compliance. We're building for the long run.
Yeah.
The problem of payment is one bad transaction can kill you. That's the big difference between. I think it's a banker who was telling me this, is like, when you're in a lending business, what is your maximum liability is the amount you lended. So you have an actual cap.
Yeah.
In payment, you don't have a liability, because if for whatever reason your system fails to have detected a sanction transaction, or sanction entity, and so on, your whole business can disappear. Every day regulators are shutting down businesses because they don't comply.
Okay. What else is, let's say, needed to make that dream happen?
What's needed? I think my vision is like it. The traditional payment and the stablecoin payments are converging. I think we're not seeing it that much yet. When you look at the announcement, not a lot of PSPs except Stripe have been moving really well into stablecoin. So there's a lot of hypes. So they are announcing stuff. So POC pilots and so on, but I'm not seeing any of the payment company really taking the steps, saying, "Hey, this is happening, and we really need to add this as our as an additional rail."
Yeah.
And so on our side, we also need to go into the traditional payment side.
Okay, and you actually just already mentioned that regulation is one of your key differentiators, or how you have positioned yourself in that space. And I think for many years you've been like more or less maybe the only regulated player in the room. That would be your unique selling point. But now regulation is arriving everywhere. Every major player is getting licensed. What is your edge in a world where compliance is no longer a differentiator?
I would disagree with you. It's still very difficult to get the buyer to entry or to continue The deadline for Mika is approaching. I know plenty of players who are not going to get their VAS converted into a CASP. In Singapore, in Hong Kong, even in the UAE, regulators are extremely cautious to who they give licenses.
Okay. But one thing is for sure, there's gonna be more licensed players. So what else?
And some people are going to exit as well, because the cost of running is regulation keeps increasing.
Yeah. But what else is the narrative for you?
After it's the network effect of in particular of banks, because what's important, because one thing which is difficult in what we're doing is really the traditional payment side, is the fiat side.
Yeah.
I mentioned a lot the banks, which are our key partners for us, and they're very cautious with anything stablecoin related. So that's where all the rails, all the network we've been building is something strong, because a lot of players, they are relying on one bank, and the day this bank has a problem, or they will be in big trouble.
Yeah.
And I'm saying a lot of, and I'm not saying it's wrong, a lot of startups and so on, and
you need to start somewhere.
Absolutely, and they're not telling their banks what they're doing. So the day they understand that they're doing something which is high risk, stablecoin is high risk.
Yeah.
They're gonna be shut down.
Clear. So diversify or build out the network, and having the first mover advantage from a regulatory point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And in our space, we probably have, we're one of the very few players in our industry where we can mention the name of our clients.
Yeah. Fair. We touched upon this a couple of times, but I just want to dive a little deeper. And you already mentioned, one of the things that is really important to you is that you have a vision and improving that vision. But if I ask you the question, what is your why? What would be your answer?
As I mentioned, I've always been attracted to emerging markets, and helping them being globally financially included, is going to give those people a ton of opportunity. Unfortunately, you're a talented person. You're a web designer with a lot of talent and so on, and so you could have a lot of clients in Europe and people paying a lot of money for that. But if you can't keep this money, or if you can't purchase even the tools you need, how do I buy my Figma? How do I buy my cloud services? I'm an AI guy. We have a lot of this use case of people buying cloud services, mostly for GPUs, but if I'm out of Nigeria or Ivory Coast, how do I pay $10,000 invoice for my AWS or whatever cloud services I'm using?
That's your why.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's gonna improve the GDP of the world, and in particular of emerging markets.
Nice. I also taste, that's an interesting word to use, feel that impact is something that's important to you. And because you've said, I've never done a company that's not global. This is what you're really putting your mark.
Yeah. And that's something which I really liked. I've been the opportunity to travel in many countries, and I've got an opinion on many of that. And that's why I'm usually saying, I don't like tourism so much, because I feel like when you're going as a tourist in a country, you don't meet the people. when you're going there for business, yes, of course, you're more meeting the higher end of the people, but you're meeting with and you're having proper conversation, and you have a really deep understanding, or fairly deep understanding of that country, and that's something I really love.
Yeah.
For transfer to tunes, I had to do so many African countries, or even in Asia. Bangladesh was, an incredible country.
Yeah.
And, I think it's the largest. It's still the largest mobile wallet in the world. So.
Yeah. We're gonna round up, and I have 3 last questions. It's a shorter segment, more not completely rapid fire, but it's called Think, Build, Live. First question: which book, framework, or experience has fundamentally changed the way you think?
The book I used to stop to quit smoking.
Oh, my dad used that one as well.
I was like smoking like 2 packs a day and so on, and I stopped. I start reading the book. I finish the book. I never ever again
smoke
a cigarette. Yeah.
What was it? What's the?
And I was wasting so much time and money on
smoking.
On smoking. It's like, and because it's funny because then your whole life is like, where can I smoke? Taking the plane. My wife would hate me because I would disappear for a smoke.
Okay. And any other books, more business related or philosophy, psychology, or you're not into that?
What I like, but I haven't seen too many impacts in the business life. But I'm a big fan of a French philosopher, but who was in Stanford.
Okay.
René Girard.
Okay.
Which is who and it's funny because it's being talked a lot because it's Peter Thiel. Also was a student of this guy when he was at Stanford.
Okay.
And which is all about mimetic rivalry, meaning that you want this thing, not because you think that you want this piano. I'm saying a piano here.
Yeah.
Not because of you really want this piano. It's because somebody else wants it. And if there's not a third party, you're not very interested.
You wouldn't be interested in the piano.
Yeah, exactly.
And what is then
and it's very true in romantic relationship. The desire for a woman, let's say, increases because somebody else
desires.
Exactly. And that shapes a lot of a human relationship.
Interesting. I'm gonna check that out. Second one, build. Which tool would you recommend everyone?
I know it's not going to be popular, but I would say coding.
Coding?
Yes. I know in the world of AI, it's...
so not vibe coding, but like hardcore coding.
Yes. I think you need to know how to do that. It's not because AI can do it for you that you should not understand how
and why do you believe you should know how to do it?
Because it will form your mind on how then you are able to explain to a developer or to explain to an AI what you need, and it's going to help you formalize the way you work.
Yeah.
Ideally, even after it depends, but I'm an engineer, so I love math.
Yeah.
So I feel like even. When I'm not using much of the math, but all the concepts are very good. So I've been trying to push all my kids to do a scientific education.
With success, or
2 out of 3. It's not
2 out of 3. It's the majority. Okay, then last question. Liv, which habit, ritual, or choice has had the most positive impact on you?
Besides quitting smoking. No, it would be obviously that has the most impact. What I like is to walk. I love walking. I'm not a big fan of sport in general.
Okay,
but
never have.
No. I'm not a sport guy. Even not on TV. But yeah, walking is great to think. I really enjoy walking, and especially in a nice city like Amsterdam.
There's just one final question that actually still pops in my mind. So You are quite active on LinkedIn, so there's a personal brand happening there. Do you already see the fruits of that in terms of the business? That it helps you in business as well, or not?
Indirectly. What I love is like people. It looks like many people are reading that, and I've got a lot of. Oh yeah, I'm following that, and I like your point of view, and you're not doing too much bullshit, and so on. And I think people like also personal stories. There's plenty of entrepreneurs, and I like to explain the things which have been difficult and things like this. But after, in terms of direct business, new leads and so on, I don't think it has a direct impact.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, what I think about this is you never know where it goes. So sometimes somebody might just say like, "Hey, I read this." And you're like, "Well, I didn't even know that this would reach you in a way," right? So indirectly.
No, but it's cool when someone stops into me. Oh yeah, I'm following your LinkedIn. It's like, oh wow, cool.
No, exactly. Eric, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Super.